Halo 5 Guardians. Now when I say that name, you're probably thinking one of two things. Either you're thinking back to running around with a gavel and speed boost in Warzone, sweating running late night team arena, and playing fun custom games with friends, or
Killing spree.
That's the aim. Controller aim in this game feels awful.
Had various glitches and connectivity issues, but the game that they created that was original content didn't. 343 blatantly lies about trying to improve by lying about the story and pre-release material. In many ways, it's better than Halo 4, and in many more ways, it's worse.
Honestly, in terms of campaign, it's easily the worst of all the Halos.
As the years went by, though, with each new title, the negativity around each game grew, really starting with Reach and culminating with Halo 5.
And I think the former viewpoint truly misunderstands Halo 5 and the experiences that it delivered. So in this video, I'm going to tell you why Halo 5 Guardians is the perfect Halo multiplayer. I'm going to split this video into 5 sections. First, movement. Second, sandbox and rec system. Third, competitive appeal and skill gap. Fourth, maps and Forge. And finally, fifth, social appeal. Also, before you go comment, oh my god, it's the Halo cycle. In 2015, people thought this game was terrible, but now they think it's the best. Nah, this game has always been good. And I'm about to tell you why. Alright, starting off with one of the most controversial changes from the previous Halos, we're going to talk about movement. Halo 5 introduced Spartan abilities that everybody spawned in with. Sprint and Slide, which are self-explanatory. Thrust, which lets you quickly redirect yourself with the press of a button. Stabilize, which lets you hover when you aim down sight. Spartan Charge, which is basically an extended melee attack. And the Ground Pound, which let any mid-air Spartan dive bomb and deal tons of damage. Now, a lot of purists saw all these extra abilities and went, those are stupid, all we should have is walk, jump, and crouch. Well, let me explain how all these abilities coexist beautifully. Sprint and Slide gave the player the ability to move faster and in turn slide to hit some cool movement tech, but at a cost. When you sprint in Halo 5, the timer to regenerate your shields resets, so if you're a one-shot, you can run away, but you have to wait out another full shield recharge, leaving you vulnerable for longer. Another change from previous Halos is that the sprint doesn't hinder your ability to shoot. You can shoot immediately right out of sprint. This is a positive change as it enables sprint, slide, and any other movement tech to be utilized in and around gunfights to further the skill gap and creativity of the game. The thrust made an appearance in Halo 4, but it was drastically improved in Halo 5. The Halo 5 thrust feels smooth and intuitive and is a crucial piece in Halo 5's gunplay and movement. It is common to chain the thrust within movement to get from A to B faster, for example thrust sliding, which combines sprinting, thrusting, and sliding to achieve lots of momentum. But this type of movement is balanced by the fact that the thrust is also crucial in gunplay. When you're fighting another player, it is common to thrust to throw off the opponent's shot. There's a general rule of thumb that thrusting last usually equates to you winning the fight. Now imagine if you thrust slide towards a sniper and a player peeks out at you. You've burnt your thrust and are flying through midair. Being midair makes your position more predictable to track as you can't strafe, and with no thrust you can't redirect yourself, making you an easy kill.
Didn't jump that time.
Stabilizing lets you hover in midair, lets you be somewhat unpredictable when challenging other players, and also enables many skillful jumps that wouldn't otherwise be possible. Now for the last two abilities, Spartan Charge and Ground Pound. These were probably the most controversial of the movement changes, and for a good reason. These abilities ended up being removed from competitive play as the last HCS season drew to a close due to them not being competitive enough, and I actually think that was a good decision. While the Ground Pound did require a height advantage and could be dodged to some extent with the thrust, the amount of damage it could do wasn't justified. The Ground Pound made anyone within its reticle one-shot and immediately killed anyone directly receiving one with a full charge. And the Spartan Charge could be chained together with other abilities to give it insane range. And even without that combo, the Spartan Charge could be very hard to avoid and unskillful to play against. In conclusion, Halo 5 changed movement in a way that heightened the skill gap, innovated as a game, and flowed well during combat. I'd also like to mention a video by Shyway in which he further explains how advanced movement enhances the skill expression of Halo 5. Definitely check that out. Before we get into the next section, I want to explain why I decided to make a video like this in the first place. I was scrolling through YouTube one night and came across an 8-year-old video titled Strategy, Substance, and Style, Halo 5 Advanced Tactics, that was uploaded to the Halo channel.
To incorporate the Spartan abilities. Campaign spaces, we've got big areas where players are rewarded for freedom, exploration. Arena, we have tons of verticality for players to exploit. Warzone, big expansive battlefields where you can go and attack bosses, or you can go and take over objective zones. We have the thrust.
Now, okay, don't click off of the video please, hear me out, but I was 9 years old when Halo 5 came out. So I was not in the loop when this video came out, but watching this video now blew my mind. Among other things, in this video they mentioned crafting the game with skill gap in mind. Before the game was even out, they were encouraging people to crouch jump to skip clambers, chain movement together, and stabilize to reach ledges.
Stabilize is another ability with a lot of depth.
If you actually jump and then stabilize right at the apex of your jump, you'll actually reach a ledge that was previously thought to be unattainable. Another hot topic for Halo 5 is definitely the flag juggling ability. You do still have the flagdom, but now you also have all the various abilities.
You can combine thrust and even ground pound if you have the height to quickly traverse across the map.
2 minutes left. Rockets are up.
Historically, when we're talking Halo multiplayer, players have had all sorts of different starting weapons.
And when it came to Halo 5, we really had to study all of our history to determine what is the best loadout.
The reason this blew my mind is that this is literally the polar opposite of the mentality 343 has had around Halo Infinite. Instead of watching the community discover and broaden the skill gap in Halo Infinite with things like snap sliding, clever jumps, and button combos, they immediately patch anything they didn't implicitly intend to be possible. This was a shift for the worse for many reasons, but I'll save that conversation for another time. Let's jump right into competitive appeal and skill gap. Like I just mentioned, Halo 5 was built with competition and skill gap in mind. 343 had a team of former pros that they recruited to help them fine-tune the multiplayer side of Halo 5, which they clearly needed after the disaster that was Halo 4. One big change from previous Halos was the Magnum as a starting weapon. Unfortunately, we had ARs as well for a while, but eventually we got rid of those, at least in competitive, as they did not promote skillful gameplay. But the choice to have the Magnum as a start weapon over other weapons like the BR or DMR was a brilliant one. Unlike the BR, the Magnum is a single-shot weapon, which requires more precise timing and aim to use than a burst weapon. For example, if you have a player one-shot, instead of sweeping across the target's head hoping that one of 3 bullets hit, you have to be precise and confident, as if you start moving your right stick too much, you can easily windmill. Another huge part of the skill gap is the movement I mentioned in the first section. The first video I saw of his was titled Halo 5 Skill Gap is a Beautiful Thing. The video breaks down a play by current Halo Pro Bound in which he uses advanced movement to be unpredictable and get the upper hand in a 2s match. Outplay possibilities like these litter every Halo 5 map and encounter. For example, let's compare Rig in Halo 5 versus the remake currently in Halo Infinite. If I'm Tower 1 and I know there's a person above me, I have a few options to challenge them. In Halo Infinite, I could walk out either way, jump to back rail, or jump to tower wall. However, in Halo 5, I could do all of those things, or using advanced movement, I can spring jump straight up to tower 2, I can walk out cuts and thrust kneecap up, I could jump out back rail and have the option to spring thrust up. There's just so many more options, and they all have ups and downs. Spring jumping up is quick, but if the guy's looking inside tower at all, he will shoot me first while I clamber. The kneecap is unpredictable and I probably won't get shot by the tower player, but does my team have the map control that would allow me to not get lasered while doing this? And it's the same thing with Plaza and bottom mid. There are a million different ways to get up, each with pros and cons on Halo 5, but not so much on Infinite. All these extra skillful options, when executed with intelligent timing and situational awareness, expand the skill gap beyond anything the Halo series has previously seen. The last thing I want to talk about in this section is pace of play. Yes, the maps are larger in scale than previous Halos, but that factor makes it much more skillful to be efficient and intelligent on the map. Instead of everyone moving at relatively the same speed, the better players will master the countless mechanics I mentioned previously to move efficiently and keep the other team in the blender, so to speak. And I know this all to be true because I climbed my way up the ladder as a player. Looking back at my skill level progression in this game, it is truly incredible how 9 years later, while playing customs on PC, I'm still finding ways to optimize my movement and improve. The skill gap in this game may never be replicated in gaming ever again. Alright, moving on, the sandbox and rec system. Bringing back and fine-tuning almost all of the staple Halo weapons from past games, including the Reach Grenade Launcher, Gravity Hammer, and even some throwback weapons like the Halo 2 BR and Beam Rifle. Power-ups also returned, with the most prominent being Active Camo and Overshield. There was also a new pickup animation when you activated any power-up, during which you were very vulnerable, making going for them more risky. Between the social and competitive modes, everything was fairly well balanced. Every weapon has a defined role, and no weapon was quote-unquote overpowered. Yes, there were balancing changes made between the two modes, like taking out Ground Pound, Spartan Charge, and removing all the autos from competitive, but going from one to the other were not completely different experiences. Unlike some other Halo games I've played. Halo Infinite. Oh, sorry, something stuck in my throat there. Anyways, now here's where shit gets crazy. the Rec System. Simply put, the Rec System was comprised of Rec Packs, aka loot boxes, which contain various Rec cards such as single-use power weapons to use in Warzone, weapon skins, armor pieces, and more. These packs could be earned at a decent rate, but they also could be outright bought, which led to some valid pay-to-win statements from the community. Not getting a certain armor or permanent right that you want could be very frustrating as well, as it is very easy to argue Reach's system was leaps and bounds better. But while the method for obtaining these Recs wasn't amazing, some of the permanent Recs were awesome. The assassinations in Halo 5 are amazing. Between sticking someone and proceeding to pick them up and throw them, or ground pounding a knife into somebody's skull, this game has by far the best selection in the entire series. To wrap this section up, the Rec System wasn't very consumer friendly, and some weapons and Warzone combos were very frustrating to play against, but the sheer amount of fun and variety more than makes up for that. Boasting the biggest selection of weapons in any Halo game, all with cool and unique abilities, Super Fiesta and Warzone were always fun to hop into and use some sick weapons, and the arena was always balanced and flowed well. The maps in Halo 5 are very interesting. When I think of maps in Halo 5, I think best maps in the entire Halo series, but that's because I mainly play Arena. Besides an outlier or two, there's not a single dev-made Arena map that I will complain about getting in matchmaking. And when we are talking about ranked Arena, I don't think there's a single miss. And yes, even the Forge maps like Echelon and Fisher I think played pretty well. But maps like Plaza, Coliseum, and Rig are in my opinion some of the best maps to ever grace competitive Halo. I would even go as far to say Plaza is the best competitive map of all time. But one place where 343 did miss the mark was Big Team Battle. Some of the Forge maps were actually quite decent, but having no developer made maps at all in a staple Halo game mode just isn't to the Halo standard, period. From what I can tell in the limited experience I've had on them, the Warzone maps are very good and play well for the skill they are. The big jungly Forerunner looking one and the city one are pretty sick in my opinion, and I remember enjoying all the other ones as well. Except for when I'm getting farmed by some 12 stack clan of nerds, that was not fun. Moving on to Forge, I think just about everybody in the community can agree the Forge in Halo 5, when we eventually got it anyway, was top tier for its time. Huge improvements, including eventually a PC port so you could create stuff even when you weren't on your Xbox, it was pretty great. I won't get into all the nitty gritty technical improvements from the previous games, mostly because I'm terrible at forging, but solely off of the maps I've played and the incredible things that people have made, it's pretty clear that Halo 5's Forge kicks ass. Nowadays when I play Halo, I play primarily competitive game modes, but that's not what I started playing. Now Halo 5 was, brace yourselves, basically my introduction to online gaming. I started out as about the filthiest casual you have ever seen. Whenever a $1 Xbox Live Gold deal would roll around, my dad would get it for me and I would spend every waking second possible queuing Super Fiesta. I fell in love with the diverse and plain fun sandbox and the awesome maps I mentioned earlier. Even when I was just playing after school on a TV with a video game time limit, I could tell this game was special. And the only other game to give me that same feeling was Prime 2018 Fortnite, but that's a story for another time. I have so many memories of finally spawning in with the Nornfang and being so terrified to run around with it, I usually just immediately died or getting my first overkill ever with a base Needler on Stasis. There was a few more game modes I enjoyed when they came around in the rotation also. Shoddy Snipes, Triple Team, and Covenant Slayer were always fun, but my favorite back then was honest to God Castle Wars. And the one other thing I did back in the day was look for fun party game customs. Django was definitely one of my favorites. I just love being the infected and watching the tower fall down after knocking it over. That dopamine hit was crazy. And I'm telling you all this to say that even if Halo 5 is remembered as the sweaty competitive game of the Halo series, you can still have a hell of a time just playing for fun.
If you couldn't tell, Halo 5 means a lot to me. It got me interested in movement tech, high-level Halo, and I met some of my favorite people while thrust sliding around online. You often hear fond stories of the old MLG days, landing in friends' basements, a thriving competitive scene, and Halo was the game at that time. But I truly am happy to have grown up around Halo 5. Hell, this channel wouldn't even exist without that game. But the game isn't perfect by any means. Heavy aim's annoying, the servers got bad, and it pissed me off every once in a while. But I hope this video can serve as a reminder or a fresh take of what Halo 5 is and the amazing things it accomplished during its time to shine. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all later. Peace!